Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to the Underdog Playoff Best Ball show. And I'm going to review the current playoff landscape, including why I think the Philadelphia Eagles actually improved their chances of advancing through the playoffs with their loss this week. There is a ton of value in current Underdog Playoff Best Ball ADP. Elite offenses like the Bills are easy to stack. Take advantage of uncertainty and start drafting now. Use the promo code SEEK for up to a $100 match on your first deposit. And subscribe to Heat Seeker Sports on YouTube for Underdog strategy and drafting shows. Hey, what's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heat Seeker Sports, and you're watching the Underdog Playoff Best Ball show. I'm going to review the current playoff landscape after week 17 as we head into the last week of the season. And there's still a bunch of uncertainty with these playoffs, but we got a lot of clarity this past week. And one of those situations is the Philadelphia Eagles situation. They lost a game they should have easily won, but by losing that game, I believe that they improved their opportunity for advancing through these playoffs by improving their week one or the wild card round matchup. And I'll get into that in a second. Before I do that, hit the like button on this video. Looking for 15 likes so I can put out a shorter video, maybe with some highlights of teams to target in the playoffs. And also make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page, because I'm going to be doing a bunch of these shows now that we are getting close to the actual playoffs starting. And on top of that, you're going to want to sign up for alerts, because I throw these shows up randomly. Like, I'll put them up in the middle of the night. Sometimes I'll put them up whenever I just kind of feel like doing a draft. I try to do a show when I'm doing that draft, and I'll get it up, whenever. And to do that, you can sign up for alerts by signing up for a subscription to the YouTube channel, and you'll be set up so that you know when these shows are going up. And on top of that, I have a couple special guests that are going to be joining me in the near future. Bobby Gomes is going to be joining me on a show, and I got Spread a Stare joining me on a show coming up here pretty soon. And we'll review the current landscape just like we did last week and give you an idea of the teams that we're targeting in these playoff best ball drafts. And in addition to that, I'm running a promotion with Underdog where you use the promo code SEEK, S-E-E-K, just like Heat Seeker Sports, and you're going to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Underdog will match you up to $100 on your first deposit on a new account by using the promo code SEEK. And you're going to want to replace the default promo code that they have in there when you go to the page and put in the word SEEK. And I will send you my playoff best ball rankings on top of Underdog, giving you up to that $100 match on your first deposit. Just send me an email, tweet, and let me know that you signed up. And I have my DMs open on Twitter, so you can just message me on Twitter, and I'll make sure to hook you up with my rankings. And on top of that, let's get into it. So, going to look at this is a playoff predictor, and you can find it on profootballnetwork.com. And it's a good source to kind of take a look at, like the current landscape and try to play around with results for this coming week and see how it affects the landscape. There's several teams that are still up in the air on whether they make it to the playoffs or not. Among those are the Packers, the Seahawks, the Saints, the Falcons, believe it or not, the Bucks, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the Lions. So there's a lot in the NFC that still needs to be settled. And in the AFC, Houston, Indy, Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and Miami. So it's a little bit more simplified in the AFC right now, the way things played out in week 17. So I'm going to go over some of these scenarios, but first I'll show you what I project to happen in week 18. I think that honestly, I had Baltimore winning, but I think Baltimore might rest starters. So I think this is a game that Pittsburgh could win, as you can see over here. it doesn't really affect them getting into the playoffs under just that scenario. But for Pittsburgh to get into the playoffs, they need to win, and they need a tie in the Houston Indy game. So if we had a tie in this game and a Pittsburgh win, you see what happens. Like Pittsburgh ends up as the 7th seed. Jacksonville holds on to the division in that scenario. Now, if that does not end in a tie, let's say Houston wins that game, then that is going to put Houston in that number 7 spot. Jacksonville holds on to the division. I'm assuming that Jacksonville beats Tennessee. Find that here. Yeah, Jacksonville over Tennessee. They're playing in Tennessee against a division rival. Anything can happen in that game. If they tied, for instance, that would be another scenario where Pittsburgh could get in that 7th spot. So Pittsburgh needs Jacksonville or this Houston game to have a tie, and that will give them a shot at making it into the playoffs. If Jacksonville lost, that'd be another scenario where Pittsburgh can win, get into the playoffs. So Houston winning and Jacksonville losing and Pittsburgh winning, that sends Pittsburgh into the playoffs. Same with Indy. If Indy wins, Indy would win the division. If Jacksonville lost, like that would send Pittsburgh into the playoffs. If Pittsburgh lost to Baltimore, that would put Jacksonville, just knock them down from the 4 seed down to the 7 seed. Same with this if Houston won. So that's the situation, how it kind of looks right now. If Miami ends up beating Buffalo, I got Buffalo winning. And there's a couple reasons for that. Bradley Chubb, just lost Bradley Chubb for the rest of the season, which is a freaking shame because I was really pulling for Miami. And I think that is a huge blow to their defense. And the defense was a large part of why they've been having a lot of success recently. But losing Bradley Chubb is a huge deal. And I think that's going to make them more vulnerable than I anticipated going into this playoff. That's why injuries just suck. Because when you get these injuries, it just screws up like everything that you had projected. On top of that, Jalen Waddle has a high ankle sprain, and he missed this past week. But it's looking like he might play in Week 18. But regardless of that, it's not good to have a wide receiver with a high ankle sprain. So I think Miami is vulnerable right now, and I think Buffalo can win that game. But if Miami won, that would send Buffalo to the number 6 seed, where they would face off against Kansas City in the wild card round. If Buffalo does win, it's going to be Miami versus Kansas City in that wild card round. So a lot of interesting scenarios there in the AFC. The way that I think it ultimately plays out, I think that Jacksonville wins. I think that Houston, I have a need for Houston to win. I need Houston to win this game because I need a bet that I made in the beginning of the season for Houston to win the division. And it's a plus 500 bet. And right now it's looking pretty good. I got basically a 50-50 chance of them beating Indy, but then I need Jacksonville to lose as well. So that's not so 50-50. I mean, I got a decent shot at winning that bet. I think that Tennessee at home can pull it off against a division rival Jacksonville, especially the way that Jacksonville has been playing recently. They have been a team on the decline at the wrong time of the season. And Tennessee, they do have weapons, and they are decently coached. So there is a potential that Tennessee playing at home could upset the Jags and knock them out of that division lead. Now, with Buffalo, if Buffalo loses to Miami and Pittsburgh beats Baltimore, then we get shitty Pittsburgh in the playoffs instead of Buffalo. So that would be a worst case scenario, especially for those of us who've been drafting a lot of Buffalo in the playoffs. like it should not be that easy for Pittsburgh to knock Buffalo out of the playoffs, but it is. So we're hoping that Baltimore, even resting starters, can still beat Pittsburgh, and we're hoping that Buffalo can beat Miami. If Buffalo wins, they got nothing to worry about. They're in. But if Buffalo loses, they need Pittsburgh of all teams to freaking lose too in order to make it to the playoffs. So it's a horrible situation. We see this every year with Pittsburgh. They're always one of the worst teams to watch play, and they always seem to make it into that number 7 seed in the playoffs and get eliminated in the first round. It's brutal with Pittsburgh. I just like sick of seeing them in the playoffs, but that's the scenario that we're looking at right now. And that, I think, about covers the AFC. The NFC is a lot more complicated because we have this number 7 spot is up in the air. This number 5 spot is either going to be Philly or it's going to be Dallas. And this number 6 spot is up in the air too. The 2 spot is up in the air because I'll read you some of these scenarios. If Dallas, in order for them to clinch that second seed, they need a win or Philadelphia and Detroit losses. So if Dallas wins, let's see, where's Dallas? If Dallas wins and Philly wins, Dallas holds on to that number 2 seed. If Detroit, let's see, wins 2, they hold on to that number 2 seed. If Dallas loses to Washington, a division opponent, that's going to bump the Eagles into that number 2 seed if the Eagles win. If the Eagles lose to the Giants, a division opponent, and Detroit still wins, that's going to knock Detroit into that number 2 seed. So there's a 3-way potential finish for this number 2 seed where Detroit could get it, Dallas could get it, or the Eagles could get it. I think the most likely outcome is that Dallas gets it and Detroit holds on that number 3 seed where they will face, I'm projecting they will face the Rams. The Rams clinched that playoff for us this past week. That's great. They can only go down to the 7 seed. So we got the Rams into the playoff. All that Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams been drafting have been secured. So that's good. Green Bay, this number 7 seed, Green Bay, in order to make it into the playoffs, if they win, they're in basically. And if they lose and Seattle loses, then they're in. But if they lose and the Saints win, where are the Saints at? The Saints are another of these teams. If the Saints beat the Falcons and Green Bay loses, then the Saints are in. So we got all sorts of like different scenarios playing out here. See, if Seattle would need to lose for that to happen too. If Seattle won their game against the Cardinals and Green Bay loses, then Seattle is in. It doesn't matter what the outcome of that Saints game is. If Seattle wins, they're in. If Green Bay wins, where's Green Bay at? If Green Bay wins, they're in. So Seattle and Green Bay both have win and in, type of scenarios. But Seattle needs Green Bay to lose. So just to clarify, Seattle needs to win. They need Green Bay to lose. Green Bay to get in, they just need to win. They win and they're in. If the Saints get in, it's because Green Bay and Seattle both lose. Green Bay loses, Seattle loses, boom, you got the Saints. But that's if the Saints win their game. So there's a lot of different scenarios that can happen for that number 7 seed to go. So that's still way up in the air, which is going to affect like the teams that we draft in these drafts. There's a way that Atlanta can make it into the playoffs. If Atlanta wins versus the Saints and Tampa Bay loses, then Atlanta wins the division. So Atlanta is still even in this playoff hunt. If Atlanta loses to the Saints and the Tampa Bay Bucks lose to the Panthers, then the Saints win that division, and then Green Bay can still get in if they win. They're winning, and if they lose to Chicago and the Bucks lose to Carolina, then Green Bay has another way in. So if they would need Seattle lose too. So it's very complicated, like with all these different scenarios playing out. You play around with this playoff projector and you can see exactly, like all the different types of scenarios that can play out. If Seattle wins and Green Bay loses, then it doesn't matter if the Saints win, because the Saints at that point, if the Bucks lose and the Saints then they get in the playoffs. So as you can see, it's a giant puzzle right now with who can make it in the NFC, because it's still so much stuff up in the air. And the main things that are up in the air basically are the NFC South, because there's a lot of different scenarios that can play out there, and the number 7 seed, which basically comes down to, the Saints, the Seahawks, and the Packers. So, those are pretty much up in the air. And then that number 2 seed is up in the air. And also the NFC East is up in the air. So those are the main things up in the air right now. The things that have been clinched are these number 1 seeds by the Ravens and the 49ers. So they've both clinched. The Eagles, all these teams, Eagles, Cowboys, and Lions and Rams have all clinched a playoff spot. So it's those 2 remaining spots that need to be decided. In the AFC, obviously the Ravens, the Dolphins, the Chiefs have, and the Browns have all clinched their playoff spots. And then we have like these other 3 spots remaining to be seen. So that's basically what we're dealing with right now. Still a lot up in the air, obviously, and a lot that we're going to have to sort through when we draft for our underdog drafts. But the way that I'm projecting it right now, let's see. I think that we'll go through all these games right now. I think that Pittsburgh can beat Baltimore. I think that Houston can beat the Colts. I think that Jacksonville can beat Tennessee. I think that the Jets, that game doesn't matter. Cleveland, I got Cleveland resting their starters. That's why I have Cincy winning this game, but it doesn't matter anyways. I got the Saints beating Atlanta at home. I got Tampa Bay beating the Panthers. I got the Lions beating the Vikings. I have the Packers beating the Bears. I think Seattle beats the Cardinals. I think the Rams are going to beat San Francisco. And I think that just because San Francisco is going to be resting starters most likely. But if they do happen to pull it off, that just knocks the Rams down to the 7th spot. But I think that the Rams will pull this off. I think that the Eagles beat the Giants. I think the Cowboys beat the Commanders. I think Kansas City beats the Chargers. Even if they didn't, it doesn't matter. If let's say the Chargers win, let's say Kansas City rests its starters. I doubt they're going to do that. If they rest their starters, I don't think it really impacts anything. So they might rest their starters. This game doesn't really look like it impacts anything. Denver versus the Raiders, that doesn't impact anything. This is another huge game with huge implications because we need Buffalo to win. with the projection that the Ravens might rest their starters, that gives obviously Pittsburgh a better chance to win this game. But if we need Buffalo in the playoffs, we need them to win versus the Dolphins, basically. Now, this is what I'm projecting for my playoff scenario. So we would have in round one, we would have Houston versus Buffalo. We got Miami versus Kansas City. We got Cleveland versus Jacksonville. We got Green Bay versus Dallas. The Rams versus Detroit. And the Eagles versus the Bucks. And then for first round buys, we got the Ravens and we got the 49ers. So this is all very interesting with strategy for drafting in these playoff best ball drafts. And as I said, make sure to sign up for Underdog right now, because this is where you want to start drafting more heavily when we're getting closer to these playoffs starting, and you can still find value before all these spots are settled. If you have a strong lean on a team and you think that they can go far in the playoffs and nobody's talking about them, maybe you like the Browns. Look at this Browns matchup in week one. Browns versus potentially Jacksonville or Houston or Indy. Like, the Browns can beat any one of those teams, and nobody is drafting the Browns early. They're drafting mid to late. I think the Browns have a very good shot of advancing past the wild card round. And Spread Astaire was on the show with me the other day. We talked about that in depth, and Spread felt that same way. So keep that in mind when you're doing these drafts. I think that the Browns can last a couple rounds in these playoffs based on this week one matchup that they have. So that's an important note. And then the Eagles are another important note. The reason why I think that loss helped the Eagles out is because the way that I project this is that the Eagles would face the Bucks in that wild card round. Before, I had them facing the Rams. And the Rams, I think, could have handled the Eagles. I think the coaching edge is there. And I think that, like, the explosive offensive weapons are there. Both of these teams have bad defenses. But the way that the offense is clicking right now for the Rams versus how the Eagles are clicking, I think the Rams would have had a really good shot of beating the Eagles and upsetting them in the first round. Now, the matchup is the Eagles versus the Bucks, who I think are a significantly worse team. And it's either going to be the Bucks, the Saints, or the Falcons. I think that the Eagles have an easy time versus the Bucks and the Falcons. If the Saints were to win that division, though, I think there'd be some trouble for the Eagles. But as it is now, I think the Eagles significantly improved their chances of advancing to the second round by having to face the Bucks as opposed to the Rams. And they did that by losing, believe it or not. If they had won, then maybe they're facing Green Bay, who I also think would be a difficult matchup for the Eagles, the way that the Eagles are playing right now. Instead, they get the Bucks, which all around is a better matchup, because if you look at the matchup from a DraftKings points allowed perspective, Tampa Bay is allowing 22 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. They're allowing 27 DraftKings points a game to the slot position, and they're allowing 16.1 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, which is all among the league most. And on top of that, Philly is allowing 23.6 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position, 19.9 DraftKings points a game to the wide receiver position, and 26.4 DraftKings points a game to the slot position. And why is that important? Because when we're looking for late round value and we got Mike Evans versus the Philadelphia secondary, then that is a guy that we can draft to cover up for our Deebo Samuel, drafting in Deebo Samuel in round one, maybe. We were looking for a guy that can put up a big game that we can get in later rounds to cover for those wide receivers that have first round buys. Mike Evans is going in the middle of drafts. So he is a perfect guy that we can draft to kind of backdoor our San Francisco players into the second round, because we're going to be getting no points from our San Francisco players in round one. And this is a weekly advancement in the Underdog Draft Ball, Underdog Playoff Best Ball competitions. So keep that in mind. Now, as far as Philly, the slot receiver would have a really good matchup, and Devontae Smith runs 32% of his routes in the slot. The problem with Devontae Smith is he just banged up his ankle. He just got an ankle sprain. They're saying it's a mild ankle sprain, which is good. So he'll probably sit in week 18, but hopefully he'll be ready to go for the playoffs. And that is a tasty 27 points a game to the slot receiver that the Bucs are allowing. So I love that. But also for Dallas Goedert, the Bucs allowing 16 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position is a big number. So Dallas Goedert is a guy that is going a little bit later in these drafts. But if you think that the Eagles are going to go far in the playoffs, which I do now that they're playing against the Bucs, I think that clears a much better path for them. Then Dallas Goedert, you're getting a really good value in ADP in these drafts. So those are some good matchups. Other good matchups that I see, Cleveland has a really good matchup against Jacksonville because Jacksonville is allowing 22.6 DraftKings points a game to the quarterback position. They're allowing 24.8 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, 18.4 DraftKings points a game to wideouts, 19.3 DraftKings points a game to slot receivers, and 13.7 DraftKings points a game to the tight end. Now, the quarterback, running back, and wideouts all have among the best matchups in the entire league facing off against that Jacksonville defense. This is going from week 7 on. This isn't the entire season. This is week 7 on. And as far as slot and tight end, they have middling matchups. So that puts basically all of Cleveland's guys in play, and they are all going late. They're a team that you can draft and stack later in these drafts. I think that they advance to the second round based on who I'm projecting them to play, whether it be Jacksonville or Houston or Indy. Whichever team that they play, they're going to have a good matchup. So that sets up Cleveland. Cleveland's in the best spot that they could be in without being the winner of their division. So really good spot for Cleveland. They're a good team to stack with a good shot of advancing to the next round. Miami ended up in a bad spot because they face off against the Chiefs. So I really liked Miami before, but if what I'm projecting happens and they end up facing the Chiefs, that is like a nightmare spot for Miami because of the Chiefs' defense and Tua's ability to perform under pressure. Now, I would much rather see for all my Miami that I've been drafting, I would much rather see them face whoever's the number 7 seed. But if Pittsburgh wins and Buffalo loses, then Buffalo is out. So I need Buffalo to win. And that is why I am projecting for Buffalo to win and face off against this Houston Texans team and Miami to have that number 6 seed. So it's a lot of this is leans, and like a lot of it is just who I generally think can win these games, and you can all do your own playoff predictor. Just go to, like I said, go to NFL Playoff Predictor at profootballnetwork.com, and you can get access to that generator. Before I was recommending the ESPN one, but that thing, like the dev work on it or something is off because it just it kept crapping out on me. So I started using this one instead. And honestly, I like this one better. Another thing that you can use is the New York Times. If you go to the New York Times playoff picture generator, let's see, I'll show you guys this too. This one kind of shows you the odds of teams making it in. It says the Bills have a 95% chance of advancing. I don't buy that because I don't buy that the Ravens are going to be playing their starters this week. I think they're going to be playing, resting their starters. And that gives the Steelers a really good chance of winning. And then it's up to Buffalo, a team that's been struggling recently, to beat the Dolphins. The Dolphins do have those injuries that I covered, which it gives it a little bit better matchup, but they're playing in Miami, and it's just going to be a tough game to win. So I would much rather see Pittsburgh lose, but I don't think that we're going to get that now that Baltimore is clinched. So the Ravens, you see, have a 100% chance, as well as the Browns. You see that the Steelers have a 28% chance. Same thing. I don't believe that that's only a 28% chance. I think they have a much better chance of winning and ruining the playoffs by like wasting a playoff spot and getting eliminated in the first round. The Jaguars have a 77% chance of getting in. Colts have a 52. Texans have a 48. I'm not really buying that either. I think the Texans are a better team than the Colts. I think the Texans can beat the Colts and get themselves a spot in the playoffs. And I think that the Jags, kind of a mediocre team right now. I think that they have a potential to lose to Tennessee in Week 18 and lose that playoff spot to the Texans or the Colts. Chiefs clinched. Cowboys and Eagles both clinched. Lions clinched. There you see the Packers. Vikings somehow have a 3% chance. I think there'd have to be a lot of ties or weird scenarios for them to get in. Bucks, Saints, and Falcons. I just covered all those guys, and you see their odds. 56% for the Bucks. Bucks could have clinched it last week, but they couldn't, and that's a shame because it was a winnable game. And now we got to sweat out another week for the Bucks to win the division. I say that because I have a lot of Mike Evans and Rachaad White, and it's doable for the Bucks, but I don't like that uncertainty hanging over the Bucks right now. 49ers and Rams both clinched. Seahawks have an outside shot at making it into playoffs, like I laid out a little bit earlier. But I think the Packers ultimately are going to take that final spot, and that's kind of my thinking on it. So this is a tool that you can use on New York Times. So if we go to the Bills, you see this 95% chance, right? Let's say the Bills lose to the Dolphins. That bumps them down to 91%, where we need the Ravens to win to bump them up to 100%. If the Steelers win, the Bills go down to 42%. So the Bills would need, if Jags won, that knocks the Bills down to a 1% chance. So this is why I don't buy the 90% chance stuff. They don't have a 90% chance because they need too many things to happen in their favor right now. And, it's just too up in the air. They need to win this game. They need to win this game in order to have a 100% chance of making it into the playoffs. So that's what we're looking at with the Bills right now. And I'm going to get into a draft here, and we can kind of do a draft based on, some of what my playoff projections are and kind of walk through the thought process there. I'm going to go into a gauntlet. So I'm going to enter it now. Need 4 more to start. And so while I'm waiting for these other people to fill the draft, make sure to hit like on the video and make sure to subscribe to the YouTube page. I need 400 subscribers. I'm at about 340 right now. I was looking for 400 by the end of the playoffs. I think I'm going to push it to 500 by the end of the playoffs. Appreciate all the views recently. I've had a few shows that have cracked 1,000 viewers, and that's a big deal for, you know, when you're just starting a channel and you're trying to get some momentum. So I definitely appreciate the views, and I get those views when you guys engage. And in order to engage, that's where we need the thumbs up. That's why I ask you guys for the likes, and leaving comments is a good way to engage, and subscribing to the YouTube channel. That's what helps my videos get recommended. And that's where a lot of new viewers are finding these videos. And I appreciate all the help with getting some visibility on these. And I try to, you know, like lay out a lot of showdown stuff for everybody. Showdown is probably my my strongest game, and playoff best ball is among my strongest games. I've had a lot of success in playoff best ball recently. About my background, I'm a former executive producer for Roto Grinders. I helped them build their audience to about 50,000 YouTube subscribers before leaving for Run Pure Sports. And I built their audience to about 15,000 YouTube subscribers before I left there. And now I'm on my own, trying to come out from behind the scenes and get my own thing going. And on top of that, like I do a lot of DFS myself, specializing mainly in showdown contests where I've had a ton of success. I've won multiple of the big $15 contests on, I think I've won one on DraftKings. I've won about 4 or 5 of them on FanDuel. So had a lot of success there. And I've had a lot of close calls on top of those wins. So I should have a lot more wins than what I have, but is what it is. But you can check out my Roto Grinders page at Pumacom, and that will show you, exactly, like where I've won my contest and everything like that. So diving into this draft now. I am the 4th spot, and Tyreek Hill is still on the board. I'm a little bit more hesitant to draft the Dolphins if they face off against the Chiefs, but it'd be the ultimate revenge game for Tyreek, and I still want to get my exposure to Tyreek, so I'm going to go ahead and draft Tyreek there, and plan on stacking the Dolphins, but I'm going to have to stack them with a team with a strong matchup in round 1, probably the Browns. So this is a perfect example where I'm going to need to stack the Browns, in addition to obviously the. I'm going to grab Purdy here because I don't want Tua. Tua's got a horrible matchup in round 1, and Purdy, the way I'm projecting it, would have a easier matchup in round 2. Purdy gets the first round bye. So I basically drafted a dead spot in round 1 because I know that Purdy's not going to give me any points. But you have to draft Purdy early because he's a favorite to make it to the Super Bowl. So his ADP is really high, even though he's not going to give you any points in week 1. That is where the back half draft value comes from. I don't want Tua because I don't think that Tua has much upside. He's had some good weeks, but that round 1 against the Chiefs, I don't like that matchup for him. I much prefer Raheem Mostert, who I'm going to draft with my next pick if he falls to me. So I need him to fall to me. And the guy in front of me just drafted Mahomes, so that gives me Mostert. So right now I'm looking at Purdy, Mostert, and Hill. I'm hoping for a San Francisco-Miami Super Bowl. That's what I'm drafting for right now. So I'm going to draft as many of these Miami players as I can without going too far ahead of ADP because I don't want to be wasting my picks just to make a stack. Even though stacking is super important in these drafts. So it's coming up on my next turn here. We'll see what these guys do. As I mentioned, use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, signing up for a new account on Underdog, and they're going to match you up to $100 on your first deposit. And that $100 that they're going to give you for free, then you can enter into this gauntlet contest 4 times. They also have a smaller contest called the Mitten, which is a $5 entry. You'd be able to do 20 of these drafts for free. And then you'd have that $100 that you put in of your own money that you'd also be able to contribute to that. So you'd be able to do basically 40 of these drafts in the Mitten, or 8 into the gauntlet, or mix and match however you want. As you can see, I just picked up Jalen Waddle. So I am looking at a full stack of the weapons of Miami right now, along with Brock Purdy. And Tua is still on the board. I could draft him if I wanted to. But right now, I think I'm going to focus on these Browns. Amari Cooper, his ADP is 31. I want to make sure that I get him. So I'm probably going to go for Cooper here in a second. I'm debating on drafting those Rams, because those Rams, I've been drafting them basically in every draft that I can. It's really hard to pass up on the value on Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua going this late in drafts. And I do think that the Rams could beat Detroit, which is where I have them facing in that first round. So to me, they are a value, but I also have A-Chain, which fell to me. So I'm going to grab him too, shore up that running game, because if they end up facing off against Kansas City in round 1, then Kansas City's weak spot is the run game, and I have both of Miami and explosive offenses running backs, which sets me up to have the better part of that matchup. I also think that Tyreek Hill is matchup proof, so I think he can do well against Kansas City as well. So that gives me some realistic upside in those weapons. Going to try to draft Amari Cooper when it comes back to me. Got to last a few more picks in order for that to happen, because I want to stack these Browns as some sneaky upside for round 1 of these playoffs. And I think it's a team that can advance to round 2 in addition to that. So really like the Cleveland stack right now. And it's pretty easy to do. Look at what round we're in. We're in round 6 right now. So round 6, and you see that the best weapon on Cleveland is still available, or at least early on in the round. You also see Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are still available. Tua is also available. I don't think anybody wants to grab Tua, knowing that all his weapons are gone. I got all his weapons, so I can hold off on Tua if I wanted to. At least theoretically I could. Someone could easily draft him. Okay, so here's where I'm grabbing Amari Cooper. So I got Cooper in addition to Mostert and A-Chain, Tyreek, Waddle, and Purdy. So I got my Super Bowl between Miami and San Francisco. I do think that Miami's path to the Super Bowl is much more difficult now that they lose Bradley Chubb. That's a huge deal. And, they're banged up. They're just banged up all around. So it's not a good scene for Miami right now, which is maybe, why some people aren't so quick to draft them. David Njoku would be the next guy up that I'd be looking at. He's already taken, though. So there goes my Cleveland stack. So when it comes back to me, I'll be looking at maybe Puka Nakua and Mike Evans. Out of those guys, I think that Evans would have the best, obviously, matchup against the Eagles. So I want that upside. So I'm going to take probably Evans next. So I'm going to take Evans here and hope that Tua lands to me in the next round, because I think I'm just going to bite the bullet and take Tua. Not worried if he doesn't land to me, though, but if I do get a him, then it's going to be awesome value, because his ADP is 27, and I'd be drafting him at pick 45. The guys in front of me all have quarterbacks. One of them has Lamar Jackson, though, so I could see him drafting Tua. But, I don't really care if I get Tua or not, just because I'm playing assuming that I'm right in who's going to make it to the Super Bowl, and that would leave me with Purdy making it to the Super Bowl. I can find some later value in a Flacco or someone like that to cover me in round one, while I'm waiting for Purdy to come to me in round, to be viable in the second round of the playoffs. So we're coming up on pick 45, and Tua is there, so I'm just going to grab him. So really good situation there, because I got Tua now. I got Raheem Mostert and Devin Achane with that good matchup against Kansas City in round one. Kansas City is allowing 24.7 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, and assuming that Buffalo beats Miami this week, and Miami is going to face Kansas City in the first round of the playoffs, then that would set me up with a really good matchup for my running backs there, on top of Tyreek, as I mentioned. And then I got Amari Cooper and Mike Evans, both in good matchups. I think that all those would be enough to make me competitive to advance to the second round. I got Brock Purdy as my quarterback in that second round. Might look to another quarterback just to give me a little bit more upside, because I don't believe in Tua versus that Kansas City defense. I think that's a really bad matchup for him. But we'll see if it lands to me at pick 52, which is coming up here in a second, so you guys can see how this is playing out. I also have Rachaad White as an option, but I already have two running backs, so I'm not looking to add a third. Seattle, I had been drafting some Metcalf and not so much Lockett, but I've been drafting Metcalf, but I don't want any more Metcalf, just based on I don't think that they are going to make it. So I can grab Godwin here and just get the rest of the Bucks there. I'm not really seeing anyone else that good. I could grab Stroud, like if I wanted, like an upside guy in that first round of playoffs, or I could grab Robinson as well. I'm just going to grab Robinson here. Nico Collins would be another guy that would be interesting to grab. You know what? I think I might end up grabbing either Baker Mayfield or CJ Stroud, because I already got Mike Evans, and I think giving him Baker Mayfield, it'd give me three quarterbacks, obviously, but yeah, if I'm looking at my team, you need to have like a full team each week, or you're trying to have a full team each week, which includes a quarterback, a running back, and two wide receiver flex options, with or two wide receiver tight end options and a flex. So you basically want a 1-1-3. And right now I have a 1-1-3 with extras. So let's see. CJ Stroud. God. I want Stroud, but I already have Evans, so I'm just gonna go with I'm gonna draft Baker here and cover my ass with that round 1 Tua. So it's not ideal. Obviously, like you'd want to have more what do you call it? More wide receivers in that volatile spot. But here, let me show you what I got. I'm going to refresh this. Go to the gauntlet. Show you my team. So as you see on the screen here, Brock Purdy is who I started off with. Actually, Tyreek is who I started off with, and then I went with Brock Purdy. So that put me in a situation where I was kind of committed to Miami. So I drafted Mostert to get the running back upside versus Kansas City in that round 1. Then I went and drafted Waddle to give me a more complete stack. And then I just said, F it, and finished the entire stack with A-Chain. So I have all the running game, and I have, the majority of this condensed offense. I got it all, including Tua. So I've got the entire Miami offense. If they make a run in these playoffs, then I'm set, right? But they got that tough matchup that I'm projecting in round 1. If they ended up beating Pittsburgh, beating Buffalo. Let's say best case scenario, Miami beats Buffalo. They get to face the number 7 seed. Let's say Pittsburgh loses and they end up facing off against Houston or Indy. Like that's a best case scenario for Miami, because then you got a good week 1, what do you call it? The wild card round matchup. And hopefully Pittsburgh would lose, so Buffalo would get in the playoffs too. But, that would put Buffalo against Kansas City, who I like that matchup actually better to have to face Kansas City. I'd rather have Buffalo face Kansas City than Miami, having need for both those teams to advance, because Tua is just so vulnerable to pressure. And I would rather have him have an easy matchup in round 1. And Allen, we know, can put up points in a difficult matchup against Kansas City. So I think that would be an ideal situation for what my needs are to have Buffalo and Miami do well in the playoffs. For this situation here, I do have too many quarterbacks. I would normally want just one quarterback, ideally. But since I drafted Purdy, I needed to draft someone to cover me in round 1. I took Tua because I had that whole stack, and Tua fell to me super late. I got him at pick 45 when his ADP is 27. And then I wasn't confident in Tua in round 1 at least, so I drafted Baker Mayfield, who I think has a good matchup potentially against the Eagles in round 1 if it works out that way. I got Mike Evans. Like, I'm hoping that it's going to be a big week for Baker to Mike Evans in round 1. Joe Flacco. I was trying to draft the Cleveland stack, but Njoku was gone. He went early. So all I had was Cooper, and I did not want to put Cooper with just well, actually, I would have put Cooper with Flacco, but Flacco was gone by the time I had that decision to make. So I kind of got stuck with an option between Stroud and Mayfield. I went with Mayfield to match up with Evans, who have that easy matchup I'm projecting against the Eagles. So right here, I feel like I have Tyreek, Waddle, Cooper, and Robinson advancing to the second round, along with A-Chain and Mostert and Purdy and Tua. I think Baker and Evans, I'll lose them in the first round because I think that the Eagles can beat the Bucks. But there is, like upset potential there with the Bucs. So I do have a potential to keep this entire team intact for the second round. But I think most likely I'm going to lose Evans and I'm going to lose Baker. But that second round is where Brock Purdy kicks in. So I'll have Brock Purdy's upside as well as Tua. Tua, like I have him there. So if he does happen to go off, I'll have it. And then I'll have the entire running game of Miami as well as the entire passing game of Miami. So I'm set if Miami makes a tear in the playoffs, like they have ability to do. And then I got Demarcus Robinson because he's just been doing really well with the Rams recently, and I think that the Rams could advance to that second round. So there's an overview of kind of where I'm thinking for the playoffs right now, and demo for a draft. But I recommend you guys, if you're just getting started in it, go to the Mitten. Let's see. If you go to the Mitten, you navigate there, going to NFL. You switch that from Saturday only down to NFL playoffs. These are the options for contests that you can enter. There's a $250 entry one, $200K in prizes. There's a $50 entry one, $200K in prizes. A $5 entry one, $250K in prizes, $25K to first. And then you got the gauntlet, which is a $1.5 million prize pool with $150K to first. The gauntlet is the main one. When this fills, they usually put out like a gauntlet. Actually, no, gauntlet 2 they'll do, or return of the gauntlet, they call it usually. And that is after round 1 of the playoffs. So they do new gauntlets basically for every round of the playoffs. And you can draft more teams throughout the entire playoffs. So if your teams do really bad after that first round of playoffs, don't worry, because you can do gauntlet 2. So lots of drafting you can do throughout the playoffs, and it's a fun game to play. And if you use the promo code SEEK, SEEK, then you are going to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. So make sure to do that. And make sure to manually load that word SEEK in there in the promo box, or you can click on the link that I have included in the description of this YouTube page, and that will automatically set you up to get that promo code supposedly. But just double check if you need to enter anything in a box when you click that link. Just make sure that SEEK is in there, and then hit me up on Twitter. You can DM me and let me know that you signed up, and I'll hook you up with my rankings. And I'm going to be doing a lot of diving into the actual matchups of round 1 to find out the teams that I think can definitely make it through to the next round of the playoffs. Right now I have a like a pretty good idea of who I am leaning towards, as you saw when I ran you through that playoff predictor. So I've taken those teams and I've done the matchups as I normally do for weekly DFS contests. I'm going to do that, simulate it through the entire playoffs on who I think is going to win, and kind of go like from there for my rankings. So that's it for this week, guys, or for this episode. I'll probably have another one a little bit later in the week. I'm going to try to get Bob Gomes on here pretty soon. I'm going to try to get Spread on here. Spread and I should be doing one later in the week, so should have that up soon. But make sure to sign up for the Underdog. Make sure to like the video and sign up for the YouTube page. Subscribe to the YouTube page. And I will see you guys next time.